Hello, my name is Lucas. Recently, I lost my best friend to cancer. This is not a story with a happy ending, but it's not a sad story, or a story about sickness either. It's a story about bravery. Me and David have been inseparable since we were little kids. He was the funniest and coolest guy I knew, and we were planning on going to college together and living close to each other forever. But it all changed when David was diagnosed with cancer. I tried to find out more, like all the details, but he just didn't want to talk about it. He said that he had 1 or 2 years to live, and he really wants to live while he can. I couldn't believe it, and everything in my life turned upside down. I also couldn't believe how calm David was after finding out this terrible news. But I took his request to heart, and decided that it was only me who could fulfill his dream. I started to plan everything we should do until he began to get worse. But then I realized it wasn't that easy, because when I asked David what he wanted to do, he would just shrug his shoulders and say, "I want to have fun." So I thought, then let's have fun. I planned a perfect few days for us. We would go to the movies and see everything we wanted. Then we'd go to an amusement park and spend some time in our favorite park, where we used to pretend we were knights and superheroes when we were kids. It was more like a forest in a park, really. That day should have ended with pizza and video games. Everything was super fun. We got to the park and started remembering all the good times we had and telling stupid jokes that only best friends can understand. We passed an elderly woman who we started calling Grandma. She was all alone, feeding birds in the park. After a few circles around the park, we noticed that Grandma was acting really weird. She dropped her cane and was barely standing. Then she fell to the ground. We were shocked. We ran up to her, checking to see if she was okay, but she wasn't answering. She was unconscious. David and I both looked at each other, both in panic mode. I stood up and started walking in circles, saying, "David, what should we do? What should we do?" David was just sitting beside Grandma and thinking. He was as scared as I was, but he was very calm at the same time. "We should call an ambulance," he said. I said, "But they can't reach here, the road is too small for an ambulance." But David repeated, "Call the ambulance, we'll take her to the road." I gasped for air. I fumbled for my phone and tried to use it, but my palms were sweaty and trembling and I couldn't really do it. David took his phone, called the ambulance and explained the situation. Then both of us grabbed Grandma by her hands and started lifting her up. She was heavy, and it was hard to pick her up because she was unconscious. Finally, we were able to lift her and slowly started moving her toward the road. Every step was hard, and we had to make a short pause after every few steps. At some point, I was seeing that David couldn't take it any longer. His knees were trembling because he was feeling weak. He was panting, and I asked, "David, maybe we should just wait for the ambulance." David shouted, "No!" He suddenly stood upright and started going faster, and I did the same. I couldn't stop looking at the determination in David's eyes. Soon we were beside the road, and the ambulance arrived after a few minutes, but it felt like half an hour. We continued to hold her, and then the paramedics put her in their car and let us ride with her. In the hospital, we were patiently waiting for the doctors to say something. Grandma's daughter came and started asking what happened, and we told her the whole story. She started to panic. Her face was getting redder and redder, and she could barely hold her tears. After several hours, the doctor told us that Grandma was alive and well, but she would need to stay in hospital for a few days. But thankfully, we were there in time to save her. The doctor thanked us, and the daughter hugged us both and said, "Thank you so much, boys. I can't even imagine what could have happened. Thank you." She was hugging us and crying for a long time, and I must admit that we also couldn't hold back our tears, especially David. We left a while after that, and she asked for our numbers so she could thank us somehow later. Afterwards, we were walking home, and I said, "Sorry that our day was ruined. It was supposed to be your perfect day." David smiled and said, "Are you joking? This was the best day of my life. We saved a person's life. What could be better than that?" I smiled and looked down. David continued, "You should have seen your face. You were like, 'Oh, what do we do? What do we do?' It was hilarious." I laughed, and then David shoved me into a wet puddle on the grass and laughed for like 5 minutes straight. Then I did the same. Revenge is a dish best served wet. And then, I was in the hospital next to him and his parents for the last days of his life. I miss him so much every day. I still have dreams about him, and then I wake up and just not here anymore. I saw his parents crying, and I was crying too. But David, he still tried to smile. I can't believe it really happened. On the day of his funeral, everyone was there, including the grandma and her daughter. It was a big reminder of how David affected so many lives of other people in such a huge way. David's parents were incredibly sad, but also proud of their son. It might sound weird, but he's the reason for me to live my life in a positive way. He was so strong, so kind, so goofy. I just want to be more like him. I want to be the person who immediately knows what to do in a tough situation. I miss you, David, and I love you. I don't know where you are now, but I hope you're happy and looking down on us all, and I hope one day that I'll be a bit more like you in the future.